This is TWiT.
Hey folks, I'm Ant Pruitt, and what do you get your favorite tech geek that has everything? A Club TWiT gift subscription, of course. TWiT podcasts keep them informed and entertained with the most relevant tech news podcasts available. With the Club TWiT subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. They also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes, behind the scenes, and special content such as AMAs, which I just love hosting, plus exclusive shows such as Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. Purchase your geek's gift at twit.tv/clubtwit, and it will thank you every day.
We should start with a story that just crossed the wire, as they say. Although there is, in fact, no wire.
On the terminal, as they say at Bloomberg.
It's on the terminal.
Where they're weird.
Mark Gurman.
Rip and read.
Filing, it's good we started late, filing at 11:02 Eastern, Pacific rather, which is normally when we would start. Apple to allow outside app stores in overhaul spurred by EU laws. Subhead, major project will help company abide by Digital Markets Act. Apple has planned sideloading as a threat to use, or as panned, not planned, panned sideloading. Remember the strong comments from Tim Cook and others saying, oh my God, sideloading is a security nightmare. Well, maybe that's what's going to happen. So let's dive in, because I haven't really had a chance to read this. Has anybody been reading while we've been futzing?
Yeah, a little bit. It is first. This is Mark Gurman. He has great track record, great results. I think that we should believe this story. I think it's also very interesting that it is such high level that it feels like he has very, very good sources, perhaps even official sources here, even though it's is so not an official statement. It's so detailed,
down
right?
to the point of which executive is responsible for which part of this. It definitely, even though the article says a spokesman for the Cupertino, California-based company declined to comment. It really feels like this is almost a press release. The changes underway within Apple are being led by Andreas Wendker, a longtime software engineering vice president, reports to Craig Federighi. Jeff Robin, Apple's top engineering manager for its services, who reports to Eddie Q, is also involved. Go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
So the story, as Gurman tells it, and it does seem like this serves Apple in the sense that it does get out there the idea that Apple is considering changes without them committing to anything, and the idea seems to be spurred by this law that is expected to go into effect in 2024 in the EU called the Digital Markets Act. That Apple is going to basically be forced to change some of its business practices in the EU. And another point that Gurman's story makes is that while Apple intends to be sort of like nimble about other laws in other countries, I think the implication there is that if Apple does this, it's going to be where it's mandated by law and nowhere else, which is an interesting thing if that comes to be the case.
So the idea here is they're working on
the
U.S.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's not. So, but in the EU might be the start of it. Although by the time, one thing that happens is the ball starts rolling, right? So the EU does this and everybody else goes, okay, well, if the EU is going to do that, maybe we should do something like that too. And you may end up in a scenario where the world kind of catches up with the EU. But the big story here is that Apple is apparently putting their engineers to work, and they're grumbling about it, according to Mark Gurman, about like, we've got features to write, and instead we're overhauling the back-end structure of the operating system to support presumably side-loaded app stores and other apps, and then the ability to have basically third-party app stores inside of iOS and iPadOS.
That's
and then
huge.
Also, it's gigantic. And then also looking at whether that means they also need to offer third-party payments in App Store apps or not, whether that's covered, whether they need to open up iMessage based on the EU regulations. They're apparently not currently planning on doing that and feel that that's not required, nor are they planning on supporting alternative texting, green bubble kind of stuff that Google wants them to do. So that's still a place where they're maybe not going to go full force here. But like the top line is Apple seems to be throughout its engineering group working on a plan by 2024 to be in compliance with the EU regulations. And that means that the App Store can't be the only place you get apps on your iPhone and your iPad.
Let me put some meat on the bone before we continue. Some engineers, according to Gurman, are working on the plan also see it as a distraction from typical day-to-day development of future features. According to The People, the company is aiming for the changes to be ready as part of an update to next year's iOS 17. So that's about a year out, which would be in line with requirements. To help protect against unsafe apps, Apple is discussing the idea of mandating certain security requirements, even if software is distributed outside its store. Such apps also may need to be verified by Apple, a process that could carry a fee. Is this
actually you can see a model for it in what they've done in the Mac in the last few years, right? Where they've added notarization, where you actually upload your app. You're a registered Apple developer, and you have it be notarized. It's actually scanned for a very high level of like, is there anything dangerous in here? And then it's cryptographically signed, which also gives Apple the ability to flip a kill switch if it turns out that it's malware. And by default, it won't. There are various security defaults, so you can run everything on the Mac, or you can run only signed software, notarized software, or you can only run things in the Mac App Store. And so it feels like training wheels for this, right? Where they know
must have seen this
what
coming,
it looks like.
And they've been
or at least as a possibility, right?
Yeah. According to Gurman, Apple has not made a final decision on whether to comply with one component of the Digital Market Act that allows developers to install third-party payment systems. That is still up in the air. And Apple's also
it's the NFC chip is the other big thing, right? Like access to the NFC.
Yeah, they're being hit by that. They're working on opening more of its private application programming interfaces, APIs to third-party apps, which is huge. Those have always been restricted. For instance, as Gurman points out, Chrome has to use WebKit, basically Apple's Safari as its browsing engine. Under the plan to meet the new law, Apple is considering removing that mandate.
Yeah.
It is also working to open up other features to third-party apps, more camera technologies, the NFC chip. This is a complete revamp of the platform in a direction that the EU would prefer, but Apple has long held makes it insecure. Alex, are you unhappy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be. I think that what's interesting about it is that I think Apple is going to, by showing that they're moving towards this. I think if you were talking to if you were lobbying in the United States, what you would probably tell people is, hey, we should see how it works in the EU.
Yeah.
That stalls everything for years in the United States, which is, of course, their largest market. So I think that there is some advantage to Apple doing this and kind of begrudgingly kind of going that direction, and showing that they're covering as many of those little pie holes as possible. It's really hard to, because I think they're just going to say, well, we don't know how this is going to go. We don't think it's going to go well, but let's try it in the EU. And so I think that could be, kind of where they get started. That could stall any kind of legislation in the United States for years, which would probably be good for Apple. I think that the issue really is, I know it sounds inverted from this, is the user choice, is that if we get forced out of the Apple ecosystem so that we have to download Netflix on a third party, if we have to download what Epic Games on a third party, we are, as users, are getting forced to use something that we don't necessarily want to use, and I think that is the other side of this.
If I were Epic, I'd make the same argument Apple makes, which is you can always go to Android. If you don't want Epic, you don't have to install our games. You have a choice.
No, that's what people will do. It'll just be frustrating that, as the Apple user that I bought into this. I paid for all, we paid for all of this, and that's working perfectly fine for the user. And so this is
probably, though, Alex, be a switch, right? You will probably, giving you choice doesn't mean forcing you into it. There could be a switch that says keep everything as it has been.
On the Mac, right? No. I think the Mac is the model here, where it'll probably be allow only App Store, allow only approved, right? Like gradations of security with the default, depending on what the law says.
But again, I think that there'll be apps that again, it'll be frustrating for the user. People like me will just spend Twitter just pounding on everybody who doesn't release in the App Store. It'll be.
You could pound all you want on Twitter. I don't think anybody's be reading it.
No one will be there. No one will be there because I'll have 4,000 characters, to do it in. No, but the point is that the.
There are some Mastodon instances that give you 5,000. So if you really want to write a screed.
No, thank you. Like literally, just as a sidebar, I was fine. I was not fine. I was upset with a lot of things Twitter was doing, but I was willing to stay on. The 4,000 character limit, I was like, well, I think I'm going to be gone.
That
now.
would be a killer.
Anyway, so
you don't like change, do you, Alex? I'm sensing that.
I just don't like, things to take, things that are not the center of my life. I don't like them to take time. That's the big thing, is that, so when people make things complicated on the edges of what I'm doing, I don't like to expend extra time on something I don't think is useful.
Focus on what you care about and not have to worry about this stuff. Yeah.
So that's my whole thing, is I like security just to work because I don't want to think about it, and so the thing is that I think what Apple will probably do is, we'll see, but we all get to look into our own globe. They're going to let this stuff go through the EU. Every problem that happens on the outside of their app store, they're going to make sure that everybody knows. This is because we did this. This is because we did this. This is because we did this. And it's going to, I think that if I was Apple, and I think that you're also going to see a bifurcation of the way they treat developers. And while the laws there's lots of ways of hedging things different ways, but if you're not building for Apple, good luck. If you're not building for the App Store, good luck on getting as much support.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff's subjective. It's very hard to measure. So it'll just be kind of like, well, we'll get to you when we can, but I don't think you'll matter as much to Apple once you go out of the.
I do feel for the folks inside the Apple campus who are coming up on the holiday break and suddenly, we got, can you stay for the weekend? Work on those little features. Andy, what do you think?
Directly to what you were just saying, like I think there are a lot of developers out there, a lot of Mac and iOS developers that they're like, thank you, Apple. Finally, you get a taste of your own medicine where, you know what, we don't want to have to spend like 3 months of our production time supporting iCloud in a feature that doesn't affect our app whatsoever, but you're making that a requirement for continued access to the App Store. How do you like having to spend all of your time on things that aren't cool features? They're just here to satisfy some requirement that you don't even agree with. But now, obviously at this point, like the news is literally 50 minutes old in terms of like when it actually hit the Bloomberg site, and all we really know, really know is that we have a very reliable reporter who's talking about this in broad terms. We don't know, everything's going to be about how it's implemented. I like what Jason was suggesting, that perhaps it will work pretty much the way that the Mac side works, where it will prevent you from doing it, but or it'll basically send you, look, we're not going to let you do this unless you go into settings and do this. And even then, we're going to basically give you a few warnings about why this is a bad idea, and then just let you do it. I don't think it'll be I don't think that as a binary construct, having an external app store is going to be, by definition, destructive. I think that the first time that when I update my Comixology app or my Kindle app or whatever, and I can actually make purchases inside the app without Apple. And Apple never had justification for taking a double-digit percentage of a comic book that they had nothing to do with the production of, nothing to do with the distribution of, nothing. I'm here because I'm a customer of Comixology, not a customer of Apple. There was no reason for them to take that money, and that's the reason why you can't buy stuff directly through apps, even in places where it's a really, really good idea. And as to other companies maybe abusing this and saying, well, from now on, if you want Netflix, you have to do it through our Netflix app store. I'm not, see, the problem with that is that we forget that the normal user wants simplicity. They are going to they're going to look for everything inside whatever the built-in app store is. And if they are told that, hey, look, we're not available in the app store, please go and go to this site, sideload this app, or go. If God, do you think there's any chance that Apple will allow these external app store apps to be available in the app store? I don't think so. But here's all the steps you have to do to install our app before you can actually get the app that you actually want. I don't think that's going to really fly for a lot of people.
It's safe to assume Apple will do the absolute minimum required by law. Is that what you're saying?
I think they'll do it to comply. They really are facing the facts that this is not a proposed thing. This is now an actual thing. And if they want to continue to be able to do business, they are going to have to be ready to pull the pull the switch on this if they have to. Now, as to the idea of Apple blaming everything on, well, this is why things are going wrong, that is typical like huge corporation behavior. Just like if you want to close down a bunch of stores that are underperforming, say it's because of shoplifting. If you want to increase the price of of your content. Say it's because of piracy. These are things that you probably wanted to do anyway, but now you're going to use this. You're not going to say that it's not because we're no good, unfair, mean-spirited Sputniks. It's because, oh gosh, we tried it. Look how horrible these things are working. I would love to see Apple expand this if it works. I do believe it's going to work, and I do also believe that once it's up and running in the EU, so long as I believe they're going to get it up and running in the EU, the world is not going to come to an end. And they're going to have one less reason when well-meaning lawmakers in the United States say, why are you not allowing app stores here? You actually made it work in other places, and now we have the data that said that the world continues to spin. There are a couple of sharp edges that need to be sanded down, but it works. Why are you not doing it here, too? It's going to make it that much more difficult. So the fact that they're actually giving those proposed laws that extra push to say we don't have the excuse that we don't know how to do this, that shows how much Apple is confronting that this is going to be a fact of life, as opposed to something they can continue to hope to wish into the cornfield, so to speak. And
on the other side of the risk is if anything goes wrong in the EU, it'll be dead for everywhere forever. like if it unwraps, Apple will. I know I'd spin the whole thing up into make the EU look stupid, make the whole thing look dumb.
Remember, legislation is in the Congress right now, the Open App Markets Act.
Yeah.
And that could be sped through, but I think you're right. Apple will probably make the case. Let's just wait and see how that goes.
Right, and again, if they can use, I think that they can use their actions here to stall that into, until it's not really there anymore.
Reactions starting to come in to Gurman's initial tweet. Florian Mueller of Foss Patents says Epic Games Store, Steam, Microsoft Store, possibly an Amazon App Store, etc., will come to iOS, at least in the EU. If Congress passes the Open App Markets Act, sooner or later it will happen. Tim Sweeney, Epic will defeat the evil empire sooner or later.
Oh, spare me.
Now, there's also tweets from people who are not so happy. Sebastian DeWitt immediately tweeted, as a developer, just honestly, just sucks. It's not going to make things better for us, just more complicated. Same goes for consumers. Sideloading is perhaps fine, but this sounds awful.